Hello guys, just a brief intro about myself. Uh, I am Akashdeep. I have done my BTech in chemical engineering from NIT Trichy, and then I worked in Dr. Reddy's for 3 years in the operations area. Just a couple of instruction for the webinar session, and it's yeah, we are streaming on Hangouts on air, and there will be some lag, but that should not be a problem because recorded video will be uploaded to, and there will be a question and answer session in the end. The session will not allow two-way dialogues. So type your questions in the Q&A panel on the right, and they will be answered in the end. No questions will be answered while the session is going on. So let's start with the operations area. So basically, I will be focusing on the underlying concepts which we use in the operations domain, and what are the concepts which are very predominant when you are going for your interviews. So let's start with what's operation defines you. So operation defines the production activities that are followed in the organization regardless of the end product. So here a bit, you should be very important thing is to highlight about there are two types of industry if you segment it. One is manufacturing and the other is service industry. The basic difference between these two industries is about the tangibility of the output. Let's say we in manufacturing industry we say the goods which are produced that are tangible, like a customer who are getting the goods, they can touch and feel the good. But as compared to the goods are intangible. If you want to cite example, you can give consultancy or training and development or the industries where the goods are intangible. So this is the basically difference, and that's why the operations in a manufacturing sector and a service industry are very different. And I will be telling you the difference between the manufacturing operations in my subsequent slides. Now, as operations determines the activities, so if we use the term management, so it becomes quite obvious that how we are governing the business of the operations, which will create the values in the form of goods or services. So in a nutshell, you can say the operation management is the administration which creates the value in the form of goods. And these goods are produced by the production activities, and these activities will be specific to different industry. Let's say you have an automobile sector, you have a steel industry, or you have a pharma industry. So every industry will have a different activities, a different process, but the end product is going to be your good or a service which will be catered to the customer. Now talking about the transformation process. Now this is the basic structure which is followed in any of the industry, in any of the operations domain. We start with inputs, and there is a transformation process where the process happens, and then we have outputs. And as I told you very in my first slide itself, that I have segmented the industry into service and manufacturing. So you might be seeing on your right side that in output I have written the goods and services. These are catered to the customer. And for any industry, the inputs is going to be the same. You will have your raw materials, you will have your machines, which will be prior installed in your manufacturing facility. Then you will be have labor. Obviously, they are required for any of the processes. And then the capital. So these are the inputs which is predominant in any industry for the operations part. And then how these inputs are transformed into output. That's where the processes are important. And from a operations point of view, you might get that what are the and how you are going to optimize your process. So here there are different concepts which talk about the quality enhancement, how you are reducing your wastage. So these things I will be covering later on, where we will be working how different companies, different let's say any automobile company or any other steel industry, how acquire processes. Very important aspect. So you must be very thorough that any operation industry, it starts with the input with the different parameters, and through a constrained path, they deliver the goods and services which are catered to the consumers. Now coming to the operations. Now as a typical question which is basically asked, that if you are sitting in an interview, why you want to pursue operations. So there are different domains, let's say marketing, operations, and finance. Now if anybody asks you that what are the basic difference between these three streams, so it's like for marketing, it generates a demand. In a market, there has to be a demand of a product until unless operations work doesn't come. So you should be very thorough that marketing starts with generation of a demand, and this demand is for any product or any service, and that is catered by operations. So you can say the operations comes, the role of operations comes once we get a demand through our marketing operations, and then via operations, which are basically the production activities, as I told you in the first slide itself, those activities create the product. And then finally, once you have your product formed, then you sell the product in your market, and then you have a different benefit profits which enhance the company's performance, and that form a part of a finance. So this is where operations comes. And as where you see a typical questions which come in the interviews, that why you want to specialize in operations, so you can have a significant answer from the aspect which I discussed here. And also in my subsequent slide, I will be telling you the different core areas where it will be more thorough to you that what operations does. Now, objectives. Now, let's say I will give you, before going to the subsequent slide, I will give you a normal example. Let's say you are going in a restaurant. So what are your prerequisite? What is that you require? You require a food. The food should be of top quality. And obviously, as a customer, you will aim that your food should be in time. There should not be any delay. So that talks about the speed of the operation of that particular restaurant. And then after the food is served to you, it's of a top quality, it's served in a very short span of time, then comes the price factor. And if it's very economical, obviously the customers will be satisfied. So for any operations going in any industry, these four are my objectives. I want my top quality, then the speed of operation should be optimum. There should be a normal balance so that I can maintain a top quality, and at the same time I must minimize my wastage. This is the core priority, and this has governed to a different concept called lean manufacturing, which I will be telling you in my subsequent slides. Now, talking about flexibility, every industry have whenever any project is started, they have a plan which you call the front end engineering report. But obviously, once a project starts, they have to be very flexible because deviations are bound to come, because there are so many equipments which you buy in an industry, but once they are commissioned, once they come into operations, there will be some of the shortfalls. So you need to take care of that. So that's why the flexibility is also one of the important aspects. So you must be very clear what quality, speed, price, and flexibility they play a role in the operation management. They comprise the core area of a operations industry. Now, this is how you are segmenting the operations. Now, as I told you, that's a famous question which you comes there, that why you want to specialize in operations. So basically, I will segment operations into three areas. Let's say project management, manufacturing, and supply chain and logistics. Now, you should be knowing that which field comprise of whatever parameters, and this will really help you whenever you are sitting for an interview, that in which field you want to specialize and why you want operations. Now, if we talk about project management, in every company there is a project. And why is it required a project management? It is required so that there is a constant monitoring over the project, and starting from the buying of the equipment till the our optimization of the processes and till the completion of the project. Everything happens in a sustained manner and in a subsequent part. So if we segregate the project management, let's say there are four different phases: planning, scheduling, controlling, and closing. Planning and scheduling, these are the steps which happens actually before the project is initiated. And they are very important because they basically forms the backbone of any project management in any industry. In planning, we generally have an objective before starting a project. Let's say I am a part of any automobile industry, and I have a certain basic parameter that X number of automobiles I have to produce. So you have a plan. So basically you have an objective. Now, how those objectives are transferred into practical realization, so that you achieve from planning. And planning is basically comprised of a series of steps which governs each and every aspect of a particular particular good is from scratch. Next part belongs to scheduling. Now, different steps which are included in planning. you need to schedule your resources, you need to schedule your labor, and that for this you use your MS Project, which is a very basic software which is used in various industry. So scheduling ensures that whatever series of steps you have in your mind during the planning step, they are in accordance with the duration of the time in which project is going to follow. Then we have the phase called controlling. Controlling happens basically in the project implementation step. Once you have done with your planning and you have done with your duration of the your project aspects, you go for controlling. In controlling, there are bound to be many deviations. Let's say I will give you a basic example. You have started a project from scratch. You have a land, then you install so many equipments, and then you start commissioning of the equipments. By commissioning, I mean to say that all the equipments, they need to be prior tested in real life, so that once the operation start, there should not be any deviation. So controlling takes care of all those deviation which might occur when your plant is running in shifts and when your plant is running for the production of the actual product. So it's a very important part when the project is implemented. And after you control all the deviations, you monitor all the aspects which might occur when your product is actually processed, you come to a closing step. Closing step comprises that all the parameters which are important in the production of any product, that is well maintained, and then you close the product saying that my X product has been produced and my customer has been satisfied, because that is my real aim. Any project management in any company, the ultimate aim is that satisfaction to the customer has to be attained, and these are the four broad aspects through which project management is done. Now, coming to the other core area, manufacturing. In manufacturing sectors, it's comprises of lean manufacturing and quality management. I will be going in depth regarding both these aspects in the other part of slides. But let's for now, manufacturing and these are manufacturing a good quality. Plus, there has to be a even, as I talked about scheduling in the project management. So there should be a evenness. It can't be that there is an uneven distribution of your resources, because if that happens, then there will be a chances, there will be a mismanagement, and your entire process will be affected. And finally, you won't be catering goods at the right time to the right place to your customers. So lean manufacturing basically talks about how you are enhancing your quality, how you are minimizing your waste, and how you are making sure that all the schedules are evenly placed. Then we talks about quality management. And if you, there's a famous company, Toyota, which has set a benchmark in terms of quality. And they followed a system called Toyota system, which primarily they focused on the quality aspect, and they enhanced their quality in early 90s. And then all the operations industry, they followed this part, and it has been a very big success. Now, coming to the third part, supply chain and logistics. Once we know that we have a project and this is the deadline, within this month we have to finish a project, then we now the problem comes, make my goods, my services, they will be catered to the customer in a proper manner. So that time supply chains comes. And supply chain doesn't only talks about the tangible part. In many cases, you have an information network which also helps in supply chain. And if you see the broad division of supply chain, as you can see on your slide, it's upstream, internal, and downstream. Upstream part talks about the different suppliers, how different suppliers make sure that the complete good is manufactured. Let's say for a toy, which has to be manufactured and which has to be supplied. So upstream will take part of the supplier part, that all the equipments and all the components of the toy which are required for the processing are supplied by the particular supplier. And this can be through any mode. It can be through any mode of transport. So this will comprise of my upstream part. Now coming to the internal part. Internal part is basically the processing. As I was taking the example of toy manufacturing, once any company has got the components of the toy which are required for the production, now the different components takes place. So it's about how the particular components of any product are assembled, and they are made sure that they comprise of a different component, and that produces my entire product to the customer. And coming to the third part is downstream. Downstream basically comprise of how the goods which have been produced in the internal states, it is scattered to the customer. So there will be different stores, there will be different retail chain, there will be different distribution center, which will take part of downstream, and it will make sure that my entire network of supply chain is maintained. Comes which you might be asked in your interview, that why supply chain is an integral part of your operations. We have the project management, as I spoke you earlier, we have a manufacturing, then how come supply chain have an integral part? Now the best answer to this question can be that supply chain is integral part because it manages a coordination from my initial part to the final outcome, and that has a different process, which I will be showing you through a slide in further on. Now, talking about project management. So these basically are the questions which are important when I am managing my project. Talking about the first part, why? Now let's start. If we have any business, from a business perspective, why do we need a project? Why do we need a management plan? So as I already told you, a project management plan is required so that each and every project is well planned and it is catered to the customer in a very efficient manner. Because at the end of the day, we want our customer to a efficient process, a process where quality will be enhanced. Now, if I know that this is the business perspective, now I will come to the management criteria and what should be the parameters which should be a part of project management. So let's say if you are starting and managing any project, so the criteria can be which are required, what are labor which are required, what is the number of hours a labor has to invest in the soft floor. So these two areas basically comprises why and what should be done so that my project is managed in a very efficient manner. After this, who will do the work? Obviously, it has to be the human resources. Then the important parts come when I am going to schedule my projects. Now, here is an important concept that when we are dealing with this aspect, there is a software MS project, which is widely used in every operations industry, which deals with scheduling and phasing. If there is a project which has to be completed agreed, so I have to follow that timeline. So in that case, this when factor is very important. And finally, whatever perspective I have been making about a business, it comes to cost. Is my capital that has to be planned prior to the starting of the project, because once I have the capital, then only I can use my capital in the proper execution of all the activities. So basically, project management talks about how you are managing a project through a set of governed activities, and all those activities are done to make sure my end product is sustained and it has the topmost quality so that my customers are satisfied. Now, talking about supply chain, as I told you, that's basic component, downstream part. Now you can clearly show in your slide that this the leftmost part, this comprise of your upstream part. You have tier 3, tier 2, tier 1 suppliers. So when I was giving you example of a toy industry, so if you applies you that concept to this flow diagram, you can easily understand that you have different transport. Let's say you have aeroplane, you have a train, and different transport, which makes sure that the suppliers supply the corresponding amount. So in case of toy, the corresponding amount of plastics supplies in a substantial time. Now this supplier, their duty is to supply to the warehouse or distribution center. So my entire network of warehouse, factory, distribution center, this comprises of my internal processing, which I told you in my earlier slides. Now, you might be saying an information network. As I told you, the supply chain is not only about tangible. Now, this is one of the questions you also might entertain in the interview, that is supply chain talks about only tangible part? Then the answer will be no. It also talks about the intangible part. And this thing is governed by the
information network, which makes sure that your goods which has reached to a particular factory or a warehouse, it is carried out to the distribution center. And this comprises your intermediate aspect between internal and between downstream and upstream part. Now once your goods are assembled in internal part, it goes to customer, and you have different stores, and this comprises of your downstream part. So supply chain management starts with the supplier end, which makes sure your components for the particular goods, they reach warehouse or a different factory, and from there it is distributed to different centers, which makes sure the goods are catered to different stores from where customer can buy or take their goods. This is what supply chain management talks about. Now, now talking about, as I told you in the earlier example about regarding, so in early 90s, what happened, the Toyota, as you know, is the biggest manufacturer of automobiles. They came across a lot of complaints from their consumers, and it was regarding the quality of their tires. So they started a different philosophy called Toyota production system, which I will take in the next slide. So, but that aspect takes care of lean manufacturing. So lean manufacturing is basically a precursor to any industry where quality is the topmost criteria. So if you go by the definition, what lean manufacturing is, it is a systematic way of elimination of waste. A lot of operation industry, they have this problem. There are a lot of wastage which are observed in day-to-day basis, and they find a lot of problem in the managing of this wastage. So lean manufacturing came with a different concept where the elimination of waste was given pride importance, and this was done so that customer value can be maximized. As I already told you in my first slide, any operations which takes place in any industry, the important part is my customer value. The customer need to be satisfied, and for the customer satisfaction, quality is topmost criteria, and which is dealt with the lean manufacturing. And after Toyota implied this different production system, all the industries after 90s, they followed this system, and they have been very successful in implementing quality, in top quality in their industries. And coming back to the lean manufacturing, it is not any tactic or a cost, but it's an act organization. Any organization need to act very effectively, so that they need to have a goods with a top quality. Now, this is basically what the Toyota philosophy was. It starts with philosophy. So Toyota basically emphasized on the 4 Ps, which were philosophy, process, people, and problem solving. Each and every aspects are very important from the point, because our basic aim is quality. Now, in long-term thinking, which covers the philosophy, what we talk about, whenever you are starting any operations, let's say if I am talking of Toyota, which is in the automobile sector, so my aim will be that in the long term, whatever vehicles I produce, they should be very effective, not only effective in terms of operations, they should be cost effective, and the technology will be of the topmost priority. So the philosophy parts the basis of any system, and which was the first implemented by Toyota. After I have a long-term vision that what will be my end product and what will be the parameter which will govern my end product, we come to process. In the process, there are different processes which flow to maintain the quality and the minimize wastage, because minimizing wastage is very important in any industry. After the process is enhanced so that the wastage is eliminated, it talks about people. Whatever the values and whatever the philosophy which are governed in any industry, that are respected throughout. And that is why Toyota got a reputation after implementing the Toyota production system all over the world. And they emerged as the biggest industry and the best player in terms of automobile sector. Now, after the people which are involved in this system, they got recognition and respect, we come to the problem solving, which is the continuous improvement and learning. Regarding continuous improvement, we will talk about this in the later part, where we will see how continuous improvement has helped many companies, starting from, let's say, Maruti or any other automobile sector, how they have improved through last 2 decades. Now, this is the concept of the lean manufacturing. As I was telling you that for any top quality product, we need to minimize wastage. So there is a very different aspect which, so you need to remember this all the 7 waste, and this is the very frequent questions which are asked in any interview. Now talking about the 7 waste, these are the waste which are followed for, and these are overproduction. Let's say you have a subsequent target which has to be maintained and managed in a month, but you cannot overproduce your any inventory, because finally if you overproduce in a, let's say in a certain week or in a certain month, you will be having a burden on your equipment, and you will be having a burden on a labor, and obviously you won't allow your labor or your equipment to suffer, because ultimately this will suffer your quality. So overproduction is one of the waste which is commonly observed in many industry. Then we talk about inventory. Now let's if you are not familiarized with this term inventory, in a basic any industry possess. So this comprise of raw materials, the finished goods, and the working process goods. So these 3 aspects, this talks care of inventory. So many times it happens that your inventory is at a high level, and after the consumption of your particular good consumer, you have a high stock of inventory which is left. So these also comprise of the wastage. Now the third parts of the waste comprise of waiting. In a lot of industry, let's say if you talk of pharma industry, which predominantly works. So if you have, let's say, any reactor of any X volume of X liter of any reactor. So once your drugs is manufactured, so people have to wait so that the entire drug is transferred from one reactor to different. This we see very commonly in the industry. Now the fourth aspect of the waste comprise of motion. As we know, there are 2 different types of operations which governs the operation industry. One are sterile industry operations, one are non-sterile. Sterile, you have a different parameters which are very important to be observed, and that can be like that you are providing an insulation to your operation industry from the external environment. So if there is a lot of movement of raw materials by individuals, so this will affect your process, and this definitely affects when you have sterile operations, because by the volume of it implements their particular strategy operation, as I told, like pharma industry has a different times goods, as I was showing you that unnecessary which also is seen from the supply side to the consumer side, and which also implies to the wastage and leads to the low quality, which are many deviations. Talked to you when I was discussing how deviations are tackled by scheduling and the manufacturing aspect in my earlier slide. Now, in rework, what happens whenever there is a deviation? So you again need to start your operations. If you're talking of a automobile industry, if you are assembling your automobile parts and you have a fully, you have gone through different made your automobile, but you after inspection you come across that a particular constraint has not been matched. Then you need to rework. About the last part is over processing. Whenever you goods for a long, it indirectly affects your quality. So this affects your operations. Quality to be is eliminated. So these are and predominantly regarding the basic waste. This is a important seven aspect which you must notice any lean manufacturing in lean tools. So these are there are so many lean used is worldwide, But these are the predominant processes which I have included in my slide. They are 5S methodology: Kanban, Kaizen, Poka-yoke, pull system, cycle time reduction, value stream mapping. Now, if you go by visual, ban means it implements in any industry. Let's say you have an inventory. As I told you, inventory are the basic assets which are like raw materials, finished goods, etc. So you have a visual card which shows all these assets in any customer value letter. So you have a visual card which shows all these assets in inventory. Which is a method you signal to your different so that good and kai means change. So this is also one of the important aspects in the industry. Now regarding Kaizen, the famous example I want to quote you about Maruti. So Maruti was the first company which came with their actor, which then gradually they improved their product. Which was Poka-yoke. This means mistake proofing. This is basically used to minimize your errors. In many industry, when you are assembling your manufacturing parts and you are also inspecting your assembled parts, you find that there are a lot of mistakes, there are a lot of errors which you incorporate. So this has to be reduced. So this techniques talks about how you are making sure that all these goods, all these errors are minimized. Then you have pull system, cycle time, which I will be talking in the later part. Now, regarding 5S methodology. Now, before going to explaining this methodology, if you see in the brackets, all the terms which I have written, these talk about Japanese concepts. And all these Japanese concepts were taken into Indian context, and then they were implied in different markets. So if we talk about 5S methodology, it talks about sorting, stabilizing, signing, standardizing, and sustaining. All these are used in any industry when you are making so that my quality is entertained. Now, sort about need to unnecessary that will help in the quality aspect. Now, talking about standardization, this talks about ordering point, that how I am making a very ordered standardized. We talk about sustainable development for any industry. Now, talking about Kanban, as I told you, Kanban was it talks about the continuous supply of components so that workers know what they need, where they need, and when they need. And it talks about just-in-time delivery of the raw materials. So the underlying concept in Kanban is save by different production items. This is followed throughout the industry, and the components has to be there whenever it's required. Now, there are other lean terms which are also used in any industry, like pull system, which includes replacing materials based on demand, and we should only produce what is needed. Then we talks about cycle time reduction. It aims at reducing processing time, move time, wait time, and inspection time. And there is also one of the terms called value stream mapping. This is a tool for guiding improvements by identifying your waste and the isolated processes. Now, talking about Poka-yoke. As I told you, this means mistake proofing. So this strategy has once when you are operating your good, then you take care of this strategy. And once your particular good is finished, then in the context of inspection, you make sure that every part is well installed and every part is at the right place. So this is the technique that helps your operators in their work caused by choosing the wrong part and leaving out a part, because this commonly happens in any industry, that while assembling different parts, the workers they make mistakes. So this strategy talks about how I will make sure my errors are minimized, which can aim at improving my safety, improving my productivity, and reducing my breakdown. So overall, this strategy is aimed at minimizing my wastage, minimizing my mistake, so that I can ensure a safety product to my customers. Now, talking about continuous improvement, as I told you, this the Kaizen means we are improving for the continuous good. So there are different aspects. Let's say access, plan and design, implement and evaluate. So these are the processes which are used for a different scenario in any industry. So Kaizen basically works for continuous improvement. And as I earlier I gave you an example of Maruti. So how Maruti improved their perspective from Maruti 800 to Maruti Gen. So they basically they relied on the continuous improvement part. They upgraded their technology, they upgraded their engine system so that customers get a new quality product, and that was followed by this concept. And as you can see, this have four different aspects. Now, talking about assessing, so whenever you are upgrading, let's say if you see the perspective of a Maruti company, what they might have enhanced in their Maruti 800 to Maruti Gen, they might have accessed different parameters which might be missing from their Maruti 800, and that they incorporated in the other model. And they would have planned and designed the different parts, different aspects for their Maruti Gen. They would have implemented, and then they would have evaluated this after the customer support. So this basically talks about improvement. And after go through all these processes, you have a different upgraded technology, and the best example is for Maruti. Now, talking about Six Sigma, this is very disciplined and data-driven approach for elimination of defect. As I was talking about the lean manufacturing, so in manufacturing, what we were doing, we were reducing our wastage so that my quality was enhanced. Now, Six Sigma, this is basically a different aspect, which is a combination of change management and my statistical analysis. And Motorola was the first company which invented Six Sigma. Later on, this was perfected by GE. So in Six Sigma, the approach is that my defects should be eliminated. So I would always aim at eliminating my defects so that my quality is of the topmost priority and quality is improved. Now, if you see, there's a very empirical relation that how Six Sigma, what is basically Six Sigma? It is basically it's a mentality which comes in any industry, and they aims at that all the defects will be eliminated. Now, if you see your slide, it aims at that finally whatever defects you have, it should be 3.4 defects per million. So this comes about a different curve where you have a different variation. So right now I won't be going into the intricate details of this thing, because this will be again going to take a lot of time. So if you guys are really interested, so we will be posting the exact details how this 3.4 defects have been arrived on our Facebook page. You can stay tuned to get the basic details how these defects have been attained. So as of now, if you go by the interview aspect, if anybody asks you what is Six Sigma, so Six Sigma is basically approach for eliminating a defect, and a benchmark has been set that for every 1 million opportunity, you can only have 3.4 defects. So this will aim at, you can see that this figure, this will aim at this percentage of opportunity, which will be expected to free of defects. Now, in Six Sigma, this talks about a different approach where you define your different components, then you measure, analyze, improve, and control. So if you talk about defects, it can be of any types. If you talk about automobile, the defects can be in your automobile parts. If you talk about a steel industry, there can be a defect in a steel rod. So the basic purpose is that I have to minimize my defect. And before this Six Sigma, all the companies were relying on total quality management, which was basically used in every European and US industry. Six Sigma came into operation post 2000, when all the industry, they had a different benchmark where they made sure that defect has to be eliminated. And as I already told, they set the benchmark to be 3.4 defects per million. So this is the path which is used in all of the industries. Now, up till now, whatever I covered, this basically talked about the operations in manufacturing. And as I told you earlier in my first slide, that what is the core difference between manufacturing and service? In service industry, we have intangibles. So if the final good is very different, so obviously the operations in the service industry will be also different. And that's why the service industry operations are a bit difficult as you compare to operations manufacturing industry. Obviously, the bottom line is that I'm going to control my output as we were doing in manufacturing industry. But here the problem arises because my goods are not tangible. They are in the form of intangible. Let's say example of a consultancy firm, or any training firm or any development firm. So there the goods, there the end products are services which are not tangible, which cannot be touched by any customer, if you say very specifically. So when you have intangibles in a service industry, so your operations becomes a bit more stringent, and that is where it has a difference from manufacturing aspect. Now, if you compare a manufacturing firm with a service firm, there are basically three major aspects which comes into differentiating both manufacturing and service industry. First is increase in customization. Second is demand variance is higher. Now, the demand is higher because I am catering to a particular customer, and my catering to a particular customer is not form of any tangible good. So obviously my variance will be on the higher side. Now, talking about the waiting time. As I told you earlier, the waiting time comprises of the time which we uses in any industry for the subsequent process of the operations. So waiting time takes a paramount lead in manufacturing sector, where you have a different equipments, different processes, and they are catering different goods. So when there are a lot of equipments in a manufacturing sector, so so the time will be taken, will be substantial, and that has to be reduced. We already operations are a bit more stringent in the service industry. Now, as I already told you, in any industry, in any manufacturing industry, quality is of top priority, and same goes with the service industry also. But there is a difference. Defining service quality is more difficult than defining manufacturing quality, because you have a different level of expectation, you have a different level of perception, you have a different level of performance from customer side. And apart from this, you have in last you can say 2 decades, you have a lot of operational challenges which you come across in service industry. If you talk about healthcare, so as healthcare is not catering any tangible product, you are only catering your particular drug to a patient. But there will be a lot of operational changes, because you have to make sure your drugs should be made in a sterile operation, and you have to make sure your drug is totally insulated from different external microorganism. So the stringent part comes more liable in operational challenges when we talk of service industry. Now, the other example is takes about aviation. As we all know, whatever there are a lot of constraints which are in the aviation industry. So that is the one of the reasons why you see one of the example of Kingfisher. Why it failed? It failed on on various ground, but the operational challenge was one of the predominant reasons. So there are a lot of issues which come across in any service industry, whether you talk about healthcare, aviation, or restaurant. Now, as of now, we went through what is operations, what are the different core areas where operations are used, and what are the different processes which are used to ensure quality. And there we talked about how different processes are used by different industries so that quality is attained, resources are well managed, and my wastage is uh, reduced. Now, definitely you can go through different. There are different materials you can follow, but there is also a different aspect called EOQ model. And frequently in interview, you might come across this model if you are saying in an interview that you are going to take operations as your specialized to join any MBA college. So, what is EOQ model? It's talk about economic order quantity. So whenever if you are in any industry, you go through different phases, the outcome is your product. So product is basically in terms of quantity. So for any supplier, for any operation expert, he has to know that how much and quantity he has to make, and when should he order that quantity to his supplier. So this model is very important in terms of my valuable product, how I'm going to make that product, and how much I should make that product, and when should I order that product. This model takes care some of the assumptions which you can see on your slide. These are like only one product is involved. The annual demand requirements are known. Demand is spread evenly throughout the year. The lead time is fixed. Now, lead time is basically the time starting from the starting of a process till the completion of the process. So time in between the process is completed from is called your lead time. So in the EOQ model, we assume the lead time is fixed, and also every order is received in a single delivery. Now, I'm just giving you a superficial aspect about EOQ model here, because in any interview nobody is going to ask you in depth, because once you join any MBA college, then only you will be reading this model in depth. So as of now, you should only know what is EOQ model and what are the assumptions which underlie this model. And talking about the empirical relations, that how this economic order quantity is calculated. So it has different you can see different variables are given there. You have a order quantity, you have a holding cost per unit, then you have demanding units per year, and ordering cost per order. And from these different parameters, you calculate annual carrying cost and annual ordering cost. You can see on your slide that the empirical relations is given, how you calculate the annual carrying cost and annual ordering cost. And because of time constraint, I won't be able to tell you how these equations have been derived. If anybody is really interested in going into the intricate details of this derivation, can follow our Facebook page, where we will be posting the solutions that how these relations have been derived and how they are used in industry. Now, after you calculate your annual carrying cost and annual ordering cost, you can find EOQ with the empirical relation, which you can see in your slide. Now, after you know what is your order quantity, you should also be aware that how you need to reorder your point. So this is a empirical relation again, where you multiply your demand rate with lead time. So by this, I can know that at what point of time I should order, and again I should reorder my particular inventory. So basically, EOQ model comprises of how much quantity you are going to order and at what point of time you are going to order. So this basic these two models talks about EOQ. Now we will be taking questions in couple of minutes. So you stay tuned to our
So there is a question regarding SCM, that how does the role of SCM, logistic and purchase department, they relate to each other. So basically, logistic management is the management of flow of goods, information, and other resources, including energy and people, between the point of origin and the point of consumption in order to meet the requirements of consumer at the lowest cost possible. So this is what logistic management talks about. Now, relating to supply chain management involves the coordinating and integrating this logistic management as described above within and among the companies. So in a nutshell, logistic management is SCM, and same goes for purchase, which is again a part of SCM. So the next question is about what is the difference between forward integration and backward integration. So backward integration is a form of vertical integration, involves the controller purchase of suppliers. Companies will pursue backward integration when it will result in improved efficiency and cost savings. For example, backward integration might cut transportation cost, it might improve profit margins and make the firm more competitive. As for example, ITC, this is a best example to give about backward integration. How they uses this backward integration in giving a way to reaching to the custom farmers in an excellent manner. Since they are so much integrated with core villages, they entered into flour industry with Asirvad Atta. Now talking about forward integration, the difference is forward integration, it involves the purchase or controller distributor. And the example is Apple. Apple is the example of the forward integration. It opened their different stores by reaching out to the consumers. So the main underlying difference between forward integration and backward integration is, in backward integration, it talks about the controller purchase of suppliers, whereas forward integration, it talks about the controller distributor. There is a question regarding supply chain, that how supply chain is used for intangible part. So regarding the example, there is about the intangible part, credit card industry. So in credit card industry, what happened? Information is transferred from various stakeholders, namely customer to transaction agent to bank and then back to customer. So this is the way how supply chain used in intangible part. And as I already told you, supply chain is predominantly used in tangible also and intangible also. Now there is a question regarding the DMAIC tools. So question is that you have asked that regarding details on the analysis tool in DMAIC, and working in an operations department, how should one be aware of these tools? So if you are working in any operations department in any company, you should know about Pareto chart, you should know about fishbowl diagram, and you should also know about Delphi technique. Delphi technique is basically the brainstorming in which industry experts are present. So these all comprises of your DMAIC tools. Now we are ending the Q&A session now. If there are any unanswered questions, you can please post them on our WebPI group page, and they will be answered there from our end. Thank you.